SQL would be, I'll not be going to spin any SQL database and then write an application to, using Visual Studio Server Explorer to add a table or write some T-SQL statements, select sort of stuff. Okay, so you guys can do that. What I'll be talking about or I'll be interested in talking about is migrating a SQL databases. Okay, think of a situation that you have your SQL database at your on-prem. Okay, and it's running and it's in the prod data and everything are hosted on top of it. Okay, now you are willing to move that particular SQL database. Okay, the SQL database is sort of installed in your local, installed in your local server. Okay, and if you want to move that particular IS service, because if you have SQL in your local box, it's an IS service. Okay, and there's a PaaS version of this which we have discussed yesterday, that's called as Azure SQL. Okay, so if you want to migrate from your on-prem SQL server to the data in the on-prem SQL server into Azure SQL, there are a lot of options. Okay, but before moving into or moving your data into Azure SQL, so you need to follow certain sort of steps. The first step would be what kind of or which particular SQL database you have. Which particular SQL server you have, whether it's 2007 or if 2007 version is available or sort of old versions, and to what Azure SQL you're going to migrate into Azure SQL, because Azure SQL would be the most recent and it's a PaaS service and you doesn't need to bother about what kind of versions it is at. But what you do is you actually run a tool and check a compatibility issues are there with Azure SQL and the database which you have at on-prem. Okay, so that particular tool is we'll be discussing later. Okay, so first thing is you need to check a compatibility test you need to carry out, and if compatibility issues are there, you need to fix all the compatibility issues. The compatibility issues may be sort of drop or select sort of drop or T-SQL statements which are not or indexing, or some sort of other steps which are actually not supported on say Azure SQL Azure. Okay, Azure SQL, but would been supported in on-prem SQL Server. And note this, Azure SQL is not a fully grown up SQL version or infra version SQL Server on-premise, right? It's not whatever features you get in that IaaS, right? It's not like every feature you have in PaaS version of Azure SQL. Okay, and they initially there were a lot of problems, and then now they have almost meeting up that expectations, and they are making this particular thing equivalent, so that because your organization would be spending a lot of amount on SQL servers, okay, storing data in SQL server, there can be sort of historic data which you are storing in SQL Server because you don't have any option. You need to keep it because you'll be retrieving weekly or sort of stuff, but they make cost. Okay, and they would be charging or they would be occupying space. Instead, you can put up some production queries on top of or tables on in place of them. Okay, so if you go to from IaaS solution to PaaS solution, the PaaS solutions of SQL Azure would give you for a cheaper option. Okay, and whenever you want, you can off on those kind of stuff. Okay, and if you're going to a freeze period, like at the end of the year, December period is coming, you can actually off it. Okay, if you're not using, you doesn't need to run to a full capacity. You can actually size down the instances. Okay, those kind of stuff. Once you have this compatibility check and the compatibility issues carried out, you actually go ahead and carry out your migration process. And the migration process are two types. So one type is you can, if you are okay with taking a little bit of downtime, you have one method of migration, and there's no or very minimal downtime is expected, then you can go with SQL Server Transactional Replication. Okay, and and how you can do this is you can use sort of this particular packs. So if you have some sort of downtime, you can use this particular with downtime kind of scenarios. What you can do is you can use built-in tools from Microsoft Azure. Okay, so we have Microsoft Azure Database Wizard, where you can actually use your data. I mean, you can take up your data or export your data from your local to your Azure SQL. Okay, and you can export where, since we are expecting a downtime with the first scenario, we can actually make a DAC package and then import that DAC package in Azure SQL, means in the cloud. If you just want the schema, and you will, what you will do is like you will switch your the next sort of, once your database comes in Azure SQL, what you're going to do is like you can route your application request directly to the Azure SQL, and you will maintain the old data in the old databases, okay, which is at on-prem. You can do that. In that case, you can actually import only the schema or the table structures, and then generate a script with that. Hope everyone knows about that, how to create a script, which is simple, and take that particular file and put it in Azure SQL and run it, and that would take care of everything. It would generate all the tables with no or empty values in it, and whatever the new application which would be running, okay, because they would be, the schema would be very consistent, because already production data was getting pushed into those tables. Okay, you just take the backbone of schema and then you push into a newer SQL Azure, okay, Azure SQL databases. So when I talk about SQL databases, you include SQL Server, which actually manages the database as well. And as I said, the method one migration with downtime, which we're gonna take care is like whenever you have, like we have a source database, which is an on-prem SQL Server, which is an IaaS solution, and we want to push up all the data into my SQL Azure instance, which is already running, up and running. Okay, and in order to define what is the compatibility, or how much or what kind of database you can opt, you can go to the previous session where I have mentioned about DTUs, data transactional units. Okay, which there's a tool which you actually run at the source database, which will give you a figure, DTUs like 100 or something, like from 0 to 10 or 20. If rating is coming, that goes into basic tier of SQL Server, SQL Azure, and if you get a rating of 50 to 100, you get a standard. You can go with standard tier of SQL Server, and if it is 50 plus, you actually go with premium tiers. Okay, so each figures, whether if you go with 100 plus, which would be 150 or something figure, okay, you will have that ranking. So according to ranking, you can define what your particular source database was taking up the load. So what you do is that, like using that particular D2 tool, you actually run that D2 tool on your production machine, which is running at on-prem. Okay, it will give the rating basing upon the input output, the traffic coming in, the transactions which are coming into your database, and the CPU capacity or CPU load it's taking up, and the network thing. Okay, basing upon the three parameters, it would generate a rating certificate. Okay, a rating score you can say, and that particular, using that rating score, you can go to SQL Azure, and with that particular corresponding D2, you can spin up a SQL Azure. Okay, so once you have the SQL Azure, now it's a process of taking your migrating your data into SQL Azure. So why these details are required is because you don't want to, like you are running certain kind of production workload, and you don't know how actually or what particular instance of SQL Azure can support that. Okay, and for that only we have details. So in order to send your data from your source database to your SQL Azure database, what you would do is like you will carry out the assessment first. So assessment you can do with since your database would be down for a while, and what you're going to do is like in order to whatever data which is there, or you don't want the data need to be filled up even when you're trying to copy the database. Okay, what you want to do is like you have firewall on top of every SQL server, right? You can actually turn off that firewall, okay, so that it won't request any read or write operations from the application, or you can actually have a copy of this particular source database in another place. Or what you can do is like you can have a temporary database where actually the reads would writes would happen or reads would happen, and that to certain limitations. Okay, and you can have those details, okay, put in, and you will have a stable copy of your database. Okay, then like you will take a snapshot of your database, and you will carry out this assessment, okay, using this data migration assistant tool. Okay, so this is from Azure, and the DMA will actually show you up like whatever after the assessment it will show up what kind of inconsistency or fixes you need to do. Okay, and you can prepare the fixes. Some fixes are auto and some fixes are you need to do manually, and then that would provide that would generate a .SQL file. And once you have you have copied your database, okay, into another database, the complete data of your source database to another database at your on-prem, what you can do is like you can deploy those fixes. Okay, so that will make this, but once you deploy the .SQL fixes, it will actually make this particular data compatible with SQL Azure. Okay, and you can directly move or make a .back file from this database, and then export that .back file into SQL Azure, and just import this .back file, and it would put down all your data which was there at source database with the stable fixes, deploy fixes into your SQL Azure. So this requires requires a little bit downtime. Okay, once you have this particular data, which is what you can say is like the SQL databases are sort of differential growth. They do have differential growth. Okay, so what you can say is like there would be portion of delta which would be the data which would be lagging. So what you can do, or what you did, is like you actually took up that delta into another database, temporary database. So take up the delta and merge it with the at the Azure SQL. Okay, and that would have a complete at present database which you were looking with have with the source database. Okay, so once that is done, you can actually redirect your firewall IP or firewall connections which your applications had to this particular SQL Azure connections. Okay, just take care of firewall or port openings or sort of stuff. Other than that, it should work seamless. And once that is done, so, and this discusses about how to optimize or how to avoid failures while doing this migration process. What you would do is like use as much as higher performance tier. Okay, so SQL Server has higher performance tier, premium tier. Okay, like you can swap from basic to premium at any moment. It's dynamic. Okay, so go and or at your on-prem, what you can do is like you can't swap there, right? So what you can do is like whatever source database, if you're copying into another database, make sure that this particular database is performance oriented or a premium tier database. Okay, so which will have basically more CPU core, everything. Okay, once you will have a less time or lag of copying your data and migrating your data. Okay, that's an advantage of it. And high service level, because it would give you a consistency, and minimize the distance between your .back file, because the database where you would be hosting, right, this should be equal to or nearby, because .back file or .back file would be a data file and it would be very heavy, and it would be much more, the data would be pushed in. Okay, if you make sure that this particular database, the middle database which you have here, if you have in the same location where this particular SQL Azure is hosted, or very near to this particular DC, that would do a great you will have very less latency or lag in your migration process. And auto statistics, or if you have any partitions on the tables or indexes, or if there are in indexes, like indexes are applied in order to make your queries optimized. Okay, so that your queries are much faster. So you can remove those you can remove those indexes which you have, so that after you move, you can actually migrate your indexes and then put onto your SQL Azure. That's possible. And try to remove any queried historical data which may be in bigger size. You move to any temporary database and then move your data, okay, before making this .back file, backpack file, and then make the .back file and try to push into SQL Azure. Okay, so these are conditions or like optimized solutions for your migration of SQL data with downtime. And the transactional replication is like you will have an active passive kind of environment. Like you can have your Azure VM at your on-premise, or you can have your own local SQL server as well in your at your on-premise, or you have hosted Azure virtual machine on cloud. Okay, in these cases you can if it's Azure virtual machine, you doesn't need to, like you have, but the latency or lag would be very less. Okay, so what you can do is like you can have set up there would be VPN connection between your this particular Azure VM virtual machine installed with SQL Server and Azure SQL Database PaaS service. This is IaaS service. So you can have a VPN in between them, and then like what you can do is like whatever transactions which actually comes to your on-premise or your Azure VM, you can actually copy it them or replicate it them in your Azure SQL Database. Okay, and there would be one particular time where like once your this particular PaaS services regained its would regain its speed, it gets hotter or it gains a speed, you can actually turn off this one, and the next calls would go into your Azure SQL Database PaaS service. So for this, you have called as processes called as like you need to create a distributor, a publisher, and a subscriber. So subscriber like basically would be your Azure VM virtual machine or your I mean like Azure SQL databases, or your subscriber would be them, and the distributor would be, there would be a process which actually whatever transactions which would be produced would be published into this particular distributor exe, and that would take care of putting into or giving into from this particular distributor. Actually these particular SQL database or PaaS instances can actually read from this from them. Okay, and in order to, when you're doing this, if you want to log those stuff, yeah, you can have a few more subscribers at your local on-prem, and you can log like what particular file was copied or what particular transaction was done. Okay, so that's a second method, and this is HD Insight. I hope, I mean like HD Insights are much deeper concepts if I discuss. Okay, what I'll do is like I'll discuss about HD Insights tomorrow. I wanted to have an uh, implementation, something like showing that how data is coming from like IoTs we can't implement, but Archana can actually explain something on this. Okay, how, because I said her like how the complete implementation is happening in your project, you need to explain, and we will have certain interaction or a sort of how it actually works for Archana's project, how they are implementing HD Insights internally maybe, or any other service on top of these IoTs. Okay, and I'll try to get some more sort of any real-time analytics or something with respect to HD Insight, and try to implement a demo for you. Till that time, what I would like to, we'll discuss about data lake at that time as well. And I have a task for you guys. Since we learned about a lot of PaaS services, okay, how to deploy a website, how to use a GitHub, how to create a traffic manager, how to have you can create a different repo as well. Okay, that you need to study on. Okay, and like I want a solution which actually what it would do as do it is this is a symbol of a local git. Okay, and so I'll have what I'll do is like I'll have a regional level local gits. Okay, and then I'll have four such regions. Okay, one in hosted in Australia, and another in somewhere in China or somewhere, and then Russia, and then somewhere in US. Okay, so I want a website to be hosted in each and every local. Okay, so whenever like think that these are four different developers. Okay, so this is a task. So I mean try to understand it perfectly, because I want solutions, separate solutions from each and every one. Okay, and the one particular solution, like what I want is like I want a different application. You can take any kind of application, or any like we have a blog engine application which is in GitHub already. Okay, so that would be my GitHub repo. Okay, from there I'll have something, you need to set up this infra where you will have a traffic manager, underneath you will have a websites, four websites. Okay, and they are in different location, different parts. Okay, so these websites can be your app service, so which will be easy for you to implement. Okay, and think of that, it's there are four different developers teams which are sitting on. So one particular change would be coming in from into this local git, and it would have this particular website change, and another sort of like there would be very varied or different kind of changes, right? Each and I mean different teams would be working on a different feature. They are not working on a single feature. Okay, so I need to have that, and then on this particular traffic manager. Okay, and I would love to have one more website. Okay, and I mean top of that underneath, I should have another website, and this website should, you need to carry out some instructions so that it actually pushes whatever code changes are there. So what happens is the local git which is here. Okay, so this is symbol of a local git which is here. The code actually can be tested in this particular website. Okay, there should be one particular production website which should be hosted in somewhere here in another location, put in an India location, and that whenever you make changes into any of these websites, right? For now, you trigger a call directed to this website. Okay, so if anyone is making a change, okay, any developer teams are putting their code into, I mean, they have successful build, they're putting the code into their local website, it should also push the code into your main website as well. Okay, so that's a thing I want. Okay, we can enhance this by having automated pipeline where actually different developer teams are trying to push. They'll be pushing, and there will be build server. You'll have a build server right now. Okay, and we talked about how to set up a build pipeline, and it should not be a difficult task for you. Okay, you need to have a build server here. So whenever a code comes, okay, it would go on to the code would be run on a common build server. Okay, which each and every teams are spinning up, and it need to take the code from the common repo. Okay, the each developer changes should go to sync. GitHub sync should happen on the common repo, and then each should have a stable copy before they are checking in. Okay, and once you have a stable copy, you will actually trigger a build. Once a successful build happens, it actually triggers a application, and it runs on a local website and also on a main website. So how about that? It's is that interesting? Hello?
It's confusing.
Okay. Okay, let me explain again. You'll have
I
six.
know.
Huh?
God,
Otherwise, so
God,
whoever, I mean, whatever, I mean, the one who understands can explain me what they understood. Jagan, go ahead, man. Try to explain the
what I
requirement.
understood,
Mm-hmm.
what I understood is basically we need to create four different web applications,
Mm-hmm.
host them in a different parts of the world,
Okay.
maybe different data centers
Uh-huh.
across the globe.
Uh-huh.
Okay, then see that basically all these applications are coming from same code base. I mean to say same version control tool,
Yeah.
and wherever there's a change happened, right, it should get published. It should be into the production.
Okay. So others, Archana, Maddie, did you guys understood? I want ETA on this, by what time you guys can put up this demo. And you guys need to have this demo set up in your own subscriptions, and then I'll get confident that yeah, you guys tore it up. You guys understood stuff.